if that's okay. So, yeah. Um, can you tell me about any memorable stories you have of your childhood? Was it your parents that came over from Poland?
Well, yeah, my parents both emigrated from Poland, and they met through mutual friends in the United States. And I was the baby girl because I had a younger brother of the clan. My mother had 7 kids. She lost a couple. And my mom never really learned the English language fluently. She could say words and she got along because we lived in different areas where there were Polish members where she could, you know, and we all translated for her. Not me, but my brothers and sisters, and my dad was more fluent. He got along.
Hmm. Did you know Polish? Learn Polish growing up?
Just words. I mean, I you know, communicated with, I don't know.
Do you
I
remember
wouldn't
any of it?
I mean, if I talked to a real person from Poland, where the way their language is, I'd probably be in trouble, but I could understand a few words here and there.
Hmm. So, do you remember what it was like growing up as a child of immigrants? Or
Uh,
were at that time
it
were there a lot
it's
of
kind of
people?
a lonely life for a child, as I recall, because I could never invite my friends over, the kids I met at school. My parents wouldn't allow it because the house was in uproar. We had a big family in the first place, and my mother was, it just wasn't allowed.
Hmm.
Like now, I notice that when parents have kids, they like to have the friends over for the children, and that's a good thing. But I missed that, so I wasn't able to. What would you call it? I didn't learn to get along as good with my peers as
Socialize?
yeah, socialize. I wasn't socialized as
Hmm.
you know.
Um, what kind of things did you like to do when you were a kid and a teenager? Any games you remember playing or things you really
Oh,
enjoyed?
we had cutouts. I remember dolls. My older sisters would buy me. They'd have jobs because they all had to quit school. They never. They all went to just to the 8th grade, and then they had to quit and go to work, help with the support the rest of the family. Till they got married.
What kind of jobs did they do?
Oh, waitresses and things like that. They weren't very well educated, just 8th grade.
Hmm. And your education level, you finished high school, right?
I was the first one that went through high school. I had a brother Hank that did that too, though. My brother Hank went through high school and then he joined the Coast Guard. He was in the Coast Guard, got married. But uh, I, yeah, my sisters were always bugged me for that. You get to go to school. But even though I went to high school, because I really struggled, I didn't want to quit. I liked school.
Hmm.
Um, you know, they, I had to work part time at this one candy store where I wasn't really prepared for it, but I did the best I could.
Hmm.
Or do whatever they ask you to do,
Hmm.
clear the tables or whatever.
Was there a little bit of resentment among your sisters because you were able to finish school and?
Oh, I'm sure there was.
Hmm.
They called me a spoiled brat, all this and that.
Is that mostly because you were the
And
youngest?
they were older than me because they were like uh, they were all closer together, and I was pretty much, the baby like. So, the babies always get the best deal, they say, don't they, in the family? I guess I was lucky to get the good deal. Of course, when I finished high school, I wanted to go to college. Of course, there was no money, but my sister Julie lent me tuition money to go to nursing school, which I thought, oh, that was cool. And my first paycheck when I got out of nursing school, of course, I paid her back. And in that time, it was only like $300, but it was a fortune.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah, she had to work hard for that, but she was glad to get it back, and I was glad to give it to her.
And then when you finished high school, is that when you met Jaja?
Well, I met Jaja. I was in my first year of nursing school, and during the Christmas break, they let us go home because I lived on campus there. They had real nice rooms. We had, for half a year, I had a girl that roomed with me. But then after the first year, a lot of people dropped out, which was customary in those days. A lot of people didn't keep up with the classes. They'd drop out. Then there was more room, so I got a room all to myself. It was really cool. And, well, anyway, during my break, Christmas break, when I came home, I didn't have anything to do. And so my younger brother Val, happened to be working at this bowling alley that my then future husband managed. He was manager. He was younger than me, and he's a manager. He was very good with boys, young boys, and he, owner of the bowling alley, realized this, so he let him be the manager, and he knew how to handle all those kids that, how they catch the ball and roll it down. He knew how to keep them in line and keep them happy. So my brother kind of liked Grandpa Don, and he thought, oh, you want to meet my sister? She's home from nursing school. So there was some affair at the school, in a neighborhood school, some dance or something. So he introduced me to him. Then after that, it was history, And well, he would come to the nursing home and visit me. At the nursing home, when you had a visitor, you had to stay down in the lobby. We had a special room where we could have visitors come, but they weren't allowed in our rooms. There's no coexistence.
They had a lot of rules there.
Oh yeah, we were strict. At certain times, you had to come in. But he liked that. He didn't mind all the rules. He thought it was cool.
Do you remember kind of how you felt when you first met him, like the first time you saw Jaja?
Oh, just wonderful. It was a great feeling.
Was it love at first sight?
Oh, yes, definitely. Probably was lust at first, but turned into love very fast,
And then after that, you told me before that while you were in nursing school, you used to leave on the weekends and kind of go.
Well, I'll tell you, the following, we met at Christmas, and by February 14th, Valentine's Day, he came to the nursing home one day, and I forget where we went. Probably out to dinner or something. And then when we got back, because I had to get back in time, a certain hour, he met me on the stairway there, and he took my hand and put this ring on it. And I was so flabbergasted, But I guess he wanted to make sure that no doctors got a hold of me, So, of course, I said, okay, you know.
And then how long were you guys engaged before you?
Well, we weren't allowed to marry while I was in nursing school, see.
Hmm.
So for three, 3 years almost, we were engaged. We
Did
wrote
you,
letters a lot, and he'd come every time, a lot, you know, whenever he could get away from the bowling alley.
and did you guys wait until you finished nursing school to?
Well, I was supposed to graduate in June, but that January before June, we decided, well, we can't. I was so sick of studying by that time. Of course, young girls at that age, they want to get married. They don't want to study. Well, I was ready to just chuck it all and get married, you know. But he wouldn't let me. He said, "Oh no, you got to follow through. You make a good nurse." I think he just wanted to marry a nurse, you know.
Hmm.
So of course I stayed it the rest of the year. And I'm surprised that Miss Moran, she was our head nurse. I mean, our head cheese of the nursing school. When she handed me the diploma in June, she says, "Miss Kibalisky, I don't know how your name slipped by my list." You know, because she checked the marriage certificate, the list, you know, how the city puts out the lists of people that apply for marriage license. Of course, I got married on a Tuesday on a weekday when I got off.
Hmm. What was your marriage like? Like the wedding ceremony?
Very simple, just a few family members, and my friend stood up for us.
Do you remember what your dress was like?
Well, my oldest sister, Helen, knew some people in downtown Detroit that sold clothes at a discount, you know, so she took me over there, and I chose a nice kind of real light gray. It was gray, but real light. It was almost white, whitish gray, like, because it was winter, you know, it was cold anyway. And I didn't have that dream of a wedding gown and like most girls do. So
Hmm.
that was fine for me.
Did you guys have a little party and everything
Yeah,
too?
we had in that basement, Boucher's basement on Inkster Road. Remember?
Hmm. Did you get along with Judge's family, with his brothers and sisters and mother?
Yeah, the mother was kind of strange, but I got along with her. I tried, you know, but I can see why Jaja had problems because she had problems. He must have inherited something from her, you
Can you
know.
tell me anything about his childhood?
His child was not good. I know that. You know, his mother was a widow. She brought up these 5 kids by herself, and her mother didn't help her great grandma, and she was bitter. She was bitter right to the end. And of course, her husband, he was never home except to make the babies, you know. And then and so she was working and trying to take care of this brood 5 kids, you know, 5 little kids. And of course, boys were always getting into trouble and stuff.
Hmm.
And of course, she was hard on them. She yelled and screamed a lot.
Hmm. Well,
So I know that he probably had a miserable childhood, you know.
hmm. Well, after you and Judge got married, is that when you guys moved into the house on Campbell?
Um, no, when we got married, uh, my dad, who was sort of a carpenter, I don't know if he was a Finnish carpenter or what, but anyway, he redone the attic, our attic in Inkster.
Hmm.
He put board on it, you know, and I painted it, and he even built in a bookcase there to hide the low spots, you know. And
Hmm.
we had a really nice room up in the attic all to ourselves.
Yeah.
That was our little weekend honeymoon up there, you know.
How long did you live there?
Oh, a couple years, I think, because after I graduated, I worked at Eloise Hospital, it was called. It was a general hospital. Oh, that was a horrible place.
Why?
People were just lined up, you know. I worked the night shift. So you just check to make sure they're all breathing, and give the diabetics their medication and things like that. It was just not so, conditions were bad then.
Mm-hmm.
All the, all the old people, I guess they might have called it an old people's home, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. How long? And you were there for a couple years?
I I worked there, and then I had Kathy was my first, wasn't she?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Kathy was a baby, and um, my mother would watch her, for me, and I could catch a few hours of sleep and go to work.
How long were you married before Kathy was born?
Year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
So pretty close, you know.
Mm-hmm. Were you excited when you got pregnant?
Um, Not exactly. I don't know. It's not like I was wanting to get pregnant, because we were still just married, and I was just out of school, and John just didn't have a real good job. And then anyway, the bowling alley, this owner sold the bowling alley and went to California, I guess, and he wanted Jaja to come with him, but Jaja didn't want to leave me. So thank goodness.
Mm-hmm.
He, that Jaja was really an entrepreneur, really. He learned how to press clothes, and he learned all about spotting, and so he rented this, went into, learned a lot of things from another dry cleaner that he worked with for a while. For a while, he was just picking up clothes. He'd go to the neighbors and knock, and then he'd deliver them back to clean, and collect. And little, like a route, they call it,
Mm-hmm.
business route.
Mm-hmm.
And they'd call in this at the cleaners where he worked, worked for, brought the clothes back to. He'd worked there for a long time, and then the owner wanted to go away or something. I don't know what. She's, anyways, that's when Jaja decided, well, he's going to become a dry cleaner. He still had the route, because he had a counter girl to take care of the counter, and he learned to dry clean the clothes and how to finish them all by himself, And then he had a little help as we got, but he worked hard.
Mm-hmm. And his dry cleaning business was on Notre Dame.
Notre Dame,
Mm-hmm. And
at the corner of Notre Dame and Telegraph.
and he opened that. What was it? What was the name of it?
Notre Dame Cleaners.
Okay. And how long did he have that for?
Oh gosh, that's a long time. I can't remember when it was. Oh, I know. In 1970, he had an episode. Um, he was bipolar, and he had a manic episode. So I took him to the doctor. I had trouble, because he was kind of acting up a lot, and progressively it'd get worse and worse. And then I remember in 1970, we decided we were going to sell the cleaners,
Mm-hmm.
which we did. And he kind of retired,
When did you?
because he couldn't run it anymore. He got so sick that he couldn't do it, just couldn't do it.
When did you start to notice that he had some issues?
Well, probably 68 or so. He got real violent, and I got scared.
Mm-hmm.
The kids got scared. It was kind of sad.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was Kathy was in nursing school at the time, I think. Yeah. See, and the kids were all getting bigger and going to school, and I was working time at Oakwood Hospital at night, and I was doing the mending for him. So he had a seamstress, I was pretty good there.
Mm-hmm.
So I worked for him, and I took care of the kids, and I was able to do all these things.
Mm-hmm.
uh,
That was pretty hard.
it was fun, though. I enjoyed it, and the kids grew up,
Mm-hmm.
So when we'd go to Dr. Schroeder's, at first he fought, how people when they're sick, they deny it that they're sick. He said, I'm sick. I said, okay, let's take me. You come with me. We'll go to see Dr. Schroeder. And Kathy was with us. I think she called him up or something, made the appointment.
How long was it before he was actually diagnosed with being bipolar?
1970.
It was in 70?
Yeah, that's when he had a real bad episode, And when we went to see Dr. Schroeder, of course, Dr. Schroeder realized right away that I wasn't the patient, And Dr. Schroeder was like a father figure to him because he never had a father, And he really, really enjoyed visiting him. Dr. Schroeder took real good care of him.
Mm-hmm.
Got along real good. I sat in on some of the visits, but a lot of them were private,
Mm-hmm.
And he decided to put him in the hospital there, for a while in the psych ward
Mm-hmm.
to try him on medications, different medications. Of course, these psych wards, they're kind of neat. They shelter you from the world. You don't have to deal with all these peoples and their prejudices. Everybody's nice to you and help your mind heal. Try and heal.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Did he respond
I
pretty
agree
well
with.
when he was in the psych ward?
Not at first, After, he wanted to go home right away. Wanted to sign himself right out,
Mm-hmm.
But and then they wouldn't let me visit for days. So I'm sure he was, they must have had trouble with him, but they knew how to handle them, sick people.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and then when he came home the first time after that?
Yeah, then he was on all kinds of medications, which I helped. Since I had a medical background, I was able to take care of it.
Mm-hmm. Did he ever really recover after he went into the psych ward, or after he was diagnosed the first time? Did he get better for a little while?
Yeah, between when he was on medication, it took away a lot of the I don't know what you'd call it, spontaneity or this higher powers in your head. It made him kind of a duller person.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't quite as, and he didn't like taking the pills. And every now and then he'd try and not take them. How they try to say, oh, I don't need them. Blah blah blah. And of course he had several rehospitalizations because he had these episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, after we sold the cleaners because he couldn't take care of it anymore, I went to work full time.
Mm-hmm.
And he was well enough to when Lizzie came home from kindergarten for lunch, or he was able to make her lunch or walk her to school. He did a lot of things that I should be doing.
Mm-hmm.
I was sleeping probably then, because I worked nights. And it was a very strenuous job. I worked with the newborn, the preemies,
Mm-hmm.
And it was pretty high tech then, but now it's even more high tech. I realize that, But at that time, they were trying to teach us, the nurses, to start IVs on those little preemies, little things. Their hand, their arms are that thin, that
the size of your finger.
That's about the time when I wanted I took in a transfer to the regular nursery. And I worked in the regular nursery a long time too.
And you were there when I was born and when Andy was born.
Yeah, in the regular nursery. I love the regular nursery. I love preemie nursery too, but regular nursery was a little easier for on my schedule too. You know.
Did you work nights then, or did you
Yeah,
work during
I
the
worked
day?
nights all the time.
Yeah. Okay. What happened to Judge in the end? Because I
Oh.
remember him when he was like in the 80s and early 90s or the 80s.
Oh, well, you know, he was, he always smoked, heavy smoker, you know, and drank. He'd have bottles hidden all over. I could never keep up with him. He's alcoholic, I guess, you know, trying to, I don't know. But he was manageable, and we got along good, you know. I was happy to take care of him. But he did all he could. I said, well, you could help me by vacuuming. So he'd push that vacuum around. He said, not too bad, you know.
And he didn't like to drive at night either. Is that right?
Well, I don't know. He'd drive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, because I remember we would always come over to your house, and he would always be on the couch, and we would play in the toy room, and we'd always ask you guys for toys, and you and my mom and dad would be like, no, you have to leave them here, and then and Judge was always, just let him take them home, just let him have them.
I'd say that too now.
So, but
he was much of a couch potato. When he was a young boy, he was self-educated mostly. He read a lot of books. He was a great reader, avid reader. He'd go to the library and he'd read whatever he could get his hands on. But he was a bad student at school. He'd be falling asleep and stuff like that. He told me, I said, don't you enjoy school? Because he got his GED finally from high school. And he had to get his license for a Boilermaker so he could take care of that boiler at the cleaners, And he's passed it. He got his license, which was very complicated, if you know anything about this.
So, well, in the end, he died of cancer?
Towards the end, I remember, let's see, we had a 41st wedding anniversary. We went to Disneyland, and we should have gone a few years earlier because he wasn't well then. He'd just mope around, drive that, what do you call those, mini bikes or something? Motor, had a motor on it.
A moped?
Yeah, the moped. Kathy and Tom and, Katie they took Katie to Disneyland. And so we all went to Disneyland. And Dad drove that moped from coffee shop to coffee shop. Wow. I enjoyed, going all over. But he said, you go ahead, I'll just sit here and drink my coffee. So we'd meet up with him and take all over, And then on the third day, because Disneyland was 3 days, we went on a cruise, Carnival cruise there in Florida. Dad and I. And Kathy and Katie, Katie, they all went back up north home. But, well, Dad tried his best, he was okay, he tried to be a good companion for my sake, really. But I could see that he was, pushing it. He'd rather just lay around. And then when we got home, I remember I think he fell and leaned against something too hard, with his shoulder. And I didn't know this at the time, but he had fractured a bone there. And you know, that guy put up with that pain, that fractured uh, shoulder, arm, or whatever it was,
Hmm.
for a couple weeks before I finally said, "Well, come on, we're gonna go get this X-ray, see what's the matter," you know, because he wouldn't go. I couldn't drag him to the doctors.
Hmm.
We take aspirin and stuff, you know, and he'd say, "Oh, it's okay, it's just arthritis, or this that," because his mother had arthritis real bad too, so I'm sure he inherited a bit of it. And when we when the doctor found the fracture, he says, then they analyzed it, you know, and they said, "Oh, it's bone cancer."
Hmm.
Oh, another thing that developed that brought us to the doctor was he lost his voice. So the doctor did one of those. He passed a tube down there and discovered his larynx was cancer. So cancer spread already, you know, to the bones and to his larynx.
By the time you got to the doctor,
And they, when they did the X-ray of the lungs, of course it was there too, big tumor, you know. So
hmm
he
and
only,
then
he only lasted a month after that diagnosis. They didn't even do chemo on him. Said there's no use, you know. They put a pin in his arm though because they thought he would be more comfortable. So he had to go through surgery there to get that pin in there for a whole month's worth, whatever it was worth.
what's your happiest memory of your marriage and your time with Jaja?
Um, they were all happy, really, you know. Especially when the kids were little, it was so great when we go on vacation together, you know.
Where did you go on vacation to?
Well, we'd usually go up north to the lake, rent a cottage, you know, stuff like that. We went to Camp Dearborn a lot. Do you remember Camp Dearborn?
Hmm.
Spent a week there once. Dad had to commute back to work, but we stayed. The kids loved it, you know,
Hmm.
because they didn't have to get dressed or nothing. They just had fun on the sports.
Hmm. Were any of your kids planned, or were all of them sort of kind of accidents?
I think I was just a fertile myrtle. I had this. At that time, there were not too many um, things that a person could do, you know, to prevent it.
Hmm.
Really, there was this. Um, what do they call that? Foam that you use.
Hmm.
Well, I used that, but that's not 100%, you know.
Hmm.
So it just happens. I was just so fertile.
Hmm.
It's a wonder I didn't have more.
Hmm.
But I love the kids. You know, once they were here, I loved the babies especially. Once they got to be like 1.5 or 2, then I hand them over to Dad. He knew how to handle them. They all loved him too. I think.
Hmm. Is that why you chose to work as a nurse in the nursery and with babies?
Um, I don't know. Maybe that's why I never did figure that one out.
Hmm.
I liked working, and then worked with the mothers on the floor too a lot. That was fun. I liked that. I liked helping the moms breastfeed and stuff.
And then after you retired, what did you do then? You retired in it was after Judge died, right?
When Dad died, uh, he died in '91. I did not retire then. I waited 2 more years till I was 65. I could have got an early retirement if I wanted to, but I wanted to work because I didn't want to have to think, you know,
Hmm.
bad mistake. But anyway, I worked. I lived in Dearborn. There, it's close by, so it was okay. 2 years, and Kathy brought me over to this condo. It was on Mother's Day. I remember we went out to had lunch, and then she says, "Come on, I want you to see something, Mom. You just come with me." Because I didn't want to move. I was all set to live in Dearborn Heights forever. I was one of these kind of people. And she brought me over here, and I looked at the condo. Oh, this is nice. Yeah, I love it. I fell in love with the place right away.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, she was only 6 blocks away,
So that makes it nice too.
Yeah, that was nice.
Mm-hmm.
And all that summer before I moved in here, I had this wagon, car, wagon with car.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what they call it, wagon, I guess.
Station wagon.
Station wagon. I was able to pack up my boxes, which was a mistake. I should have got rid of all that stuff right away, not dragged it all over here. But every week I'd come over here, when I wasn't working or something, and Winnie put those up, stencils.
Mm-hmm.
We had painters and got a new rug, and it was kind of nice. Like a new apartment.
Mm-hmm.
Really cool. Now that I think of it, it's way too big for one person. But they don't make it any smaller in this unit. Maybe somewhere else they do. But
Mm-hmm.
this is nice over here.
Mm-hmm. Or when you have people to come to visit.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I got a lot of room.
Mm-hmm. Was it nice being able to live close to Kathy?
Yeah.
Was she over here a lot?
Mm-hmm. Oh, we were back and forth. I could walk over there. She'd come over here. We'd walk the dogs, or I'd go over there.
Mm-hmm.
We could walk or take. I drove my bike in those days, which was fun too.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and now you played bingo. What else did you do once you retired to kind of fill your days and?
Yeah, for a while there, I was playing bingo every day because when I lived in wait a minute, when did I start this bingo? This bad habit. I forget. Oh yeah, Marilyn's the one that led me to this. She told me, "Oh, there's a good bingo over on Ford Road, And we'd go over there like Monday and Tuesday, and then Wednesday we'd go here, and Tuesday there. And I'd meet them over there. That was kind of fun.
Mm-hmm.
But it got to be expensive, and I got tired of all that.
What else do you remember about the house over on Campbell?
Well, I remember when we came, Dad built a lot of the stuff himself. The kids were little, and I worked. So I'd watch the kids, and Dad would be working on the projects around the house, and he did a lot of the renovating himself, He's pretty good at that, too.
Mm-hmm.
He'd have occasional helpers. And
how many kids did you have when you moved into that house?
just Kathy, and I was expecting Donnie at the time, I think.
Donnie. So you had Dave
That's
as well?
when we moved in.
Or is Don older than Dave? No, Dave's older than Don.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The boys are 3 years apart.
So you had Kathy and Dave, and you were expecting Uncle
Kathy and Don
Kathy and Don. Okay.
are a year and a half apart.
Okay. So.
And Lizzie and and Ricky are only a year apart.
Mm-hmm. So, the little periods where you had a couple kids there
Yeah.
at a time.
Boy, I thought for a while that was it,
Mm-hmm.
But it's funny how you don't plan these things. I didn't plan on having a big family
Mm-hmm.
because we were struggling, really actually struggling.
Mm-hmm.
But we didn't notice it. Then I went. Well, I'll tell you how I started working. When the kids were little, for about 10 years, of our marriage. We were married, and I was just doing the alterations and taking care of the kids and having the kids, of course. And Dad got this car, this big car. He knew how to buy these old cars, that are a few years old, that were in good running shape, just like your dad does. He knows how to select them. He did that, and he brought this car home. He says, "You like that? You know what? You could go to the zoo with," because Aunt Julie lived not too far from my house over there. So Aunt Julie and I would pack the kids in the car, and we'd go to the zoo or to Belle Isle, with the kids, or to Camp Dearborn, wherever, wherever we wanted to. And he says, it would be so nice if maybe you could go back to work, and one day a week, and make the payments on it, because we didn't buy cash then, I said, "Oh, yeah, I guess I could do that." So I thought, oh, yeah, they're going to hire me like me.
Did you make pretty good money as a nurse?
I went into Oakwood and just scouting the place, and getting my credentials and my diploma and all that stuff that they required. And they were short on nurses at that time. And can you start tomorrow? Tomorrow? Well, anyway, that started it.
Did you make pretty good money as a nurse back then?
I thought so, but of course it's nothing when you look back at it. When I finally retired, my highest hourly wage was like $22 an hour.
And that was in '93. So.
Yeah. That was supposed to be good,
And nowadays.
But the nice thing about having worked was I get a nice pension and Social Security check. And I'm able to afford this big mansion to me.
And bingo.
Yeah, and bingo. And not really. I mean, I eat pretty good. I got I can go shopping and buy gas and things. So I got a few savings,
Do you have any other memories you'd like to share with me today? Anything else I forgot to ask you about?
Well, one thing is very strange that I could never figure out. I knew Dad loved me, but he never would say it. He never would say, "I love you," He'd write, when we write me in the letters, he'd say, "I love you," or things. Well, not exactly. He kind of beat around the bush, He wouldn't commit himself. But when he got sick, and he was almost towards the end, he says, "I love you," and that just sticks out, Why did he wait so long? But I knew he loved me,
Do you miss him a lot?
Oh, yeah.
You think about him a lot? Yeah. Yeah. How long were you guys married for?
41 years.
41. So, is that why you haven't?
And the saddest part is, I was almost ready to retire, and he was, I had 2 more years to go to retirement, and of course, he would have been right behind me. We could have had a wonderful time together. Wouldn't have had to have, I wouldn't have had to go to work and leave him and all that. We could have done something more. But it wasn't to be.
Yeah. Is that why you haven't ever tried to date again after him?
Well, I tried. I mean, I not actually tried, but I just don't have the desire.
Yeah.
Nobody else turns me on like he did, you know.
Mhm. He was your one and only.
Yeah, I think so.
Mhm.
Some people are like that, just one time.
Mhm.
Once is enough. Been there, done that, you know.
Mhm. So, do you have any regrets?
None that I can think of.
That's
I would have had more kids, I think. I would have liked that.
More.
I lost one, and I regret having lost that one, you know.
Did
One,
you have a miscarriage?
I could have had another kid there. What happened? I don't know. I never could figure it out. Just happens, you know.
Was that after Ricky or?
It was after Danny, I think.
Mhm. Mm, that's sad.
But you know, you miss them.
Mhm. So.
Like I had another little boy or whatever, whatever it was. I don't know.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, you had six. Six is a lot too.
Yeah,
So.
I'm sure it is.
Mhm. So. Are there any stories that your dad used to tell you? You can remember him talking about Poland or about his family.
You know, that's another thing I regret having. I should have questioned my mother or tried to get it out of her, the stories, you know. But it seems like when I got into my adulthood, she had a stroke, you know, and she couldn't talk. So it was too late to then, you know.
Mhm. How old were you when your dad passed?
Uh, I was married then. He died in 61, I believe.
Okay.
He was 69 years old
And your mom passed away?
in 72. So, and I was having trouble at home with Dad, you know, around that time. She died in 72. In 70, we lost, not lost, but sold the cleaners. And of course, we didn't get enough money out of it, you know, hardly, didn't even pay for those lots we had that I worked especially to pay taxes on them so that the property would be worth more. Well, if we didn't have those lots, I don't think we would have been able to sell the cleaners because the businesses were down at that time of the, you know,
Mhm.
recession already started or whatever.
Mhm. Was it pretty hard, pretty much raising the kids by yourself later on and trying to pay all the bills as well?
Well, kids were pretty much grown up by then, you know, so it was okay,
Mhm.
you know.
So. Mhm. What is like one of the habits of Judge that you remember the most? Did he have any?
He was a wonderful conversationalist, and he could talk, you know. And he was interesting, not like Tom Stoner. You know, Tom Stoner likes to talk a lot,
Mhm.
but you don't know what the heck he's talking about. Well, Jaja could converse with you, and he could keep your attention for hours. He was great at that. I wish I were that talented, darn.
Yeah. Was he pretty much able to pick up a
Oh.
conversation with anybody?
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
He's a lot like your mom. Your mom has friends all over the world, you know.
Mhm.
Everywhere she goes. I remember when we traveled. Where did we go? I forgot. Wasn't we? Not New York. Washington D.C. maybe. She'd bump into people that she knew there.
Mhm.
Well, Dad didn't do that, but he he was. So I think that's one of the reasons his business thrived because he was able to talk to his customers. You know,
Mhm.
if something ever went wrong, the counter girls didn't know how to handle it. You know, he'd come along and. Boy, these women would just bow and they loved him, you know, all the customers. they'd be a different person, you know. before before he came on the scene, they were angry and ready to, you know, oh, you ruined my dress, oh, this or that, you know.
Hmm.
He'd come around and
Were you ever jealous?
of that fact, yeah.
Hmm. Did you ever have? Were you ever afraid of him maybe cheating on you?
No,
No.
I was jealous because he attracted a lot of people, and you know, girls liked him.
Hmm. But you had his heart.
He came home to me every night,
Hmm.
you know.
So, can you tell me anything else about him? About his personality and
Mm,
anything he specifically really liked or any habits he had?
oh, he was always, whenever we'd go somewhere, he'd always make sure he had the proper clothes on. He was very, what would you call that? Very conscious of how he looked. You know, he always wanted to make a good impression on with his looks. You know,
Hmm.
had that Brill cream. I remember he used to use that Brill cream in his hair and slick it down. You know, and
Hmm.
nothing got him madder is when I mess his hair up.
What were you like when you were younger?
I don't know.
Anything specific you really liked or things that really made you mad?
I was very quiet and studious, maybe. You know,
Hmm. Did you follow the rules all the time or were you a rule breaker and a little more of a rebel?
I was pretty much stick by the rules.
Hmm. Is that your wedding ring?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Have you had that since you guys got married?
Mm-hmm.
It's really pretty.
He had a ring just like that.
Yeah? What happened to it?
I think Ricky's got it.
Uh,
Ricky wanted it.
hmm.
So I got a ring from Kathy and you kids. She she thought of this. Each of those represents the month of the stone that you were born. You know,
Hmm.
like this one's Kathy, and that's Donnie, and that's Danny. I mean David and Danny.
They were all born during different months.
Yeah, so they're different stones, you know, and
Hmm.
really pretty.
That's really nice.
Yeah.
So, can you think of anything else?
No.
Nope. Did you pretty much like all of the kids that, or all of the people that your kids chose to marry and chose to be with?
Yes, I did. The one thing that I really was strong at was keeping the kids in school because they all wanted to quit. You know,
All of them did?
just about all of them. Not David was a scholar. He's a genius type scholar. Donnie's smart too,
Hmm.
and Kathy too. Yeah, they're all smart. Even Danny.
They're really smart.
Daddy's smart too. What am I saying? Even Daddy. I don't mean Dad. He's smart. He's an entrepreneur too. You know.
Hmm.
Do you notice he got
Yeah.
his business started all?
Hmm. So,
Yeah. I remember Dad told Dr. Schroeder that he can't. You know, he couldn't get a job after he sold the cleaners. You know. He says, well, that's because you were an entrepreneur. You have a hard time keeping the job now. You've gotten so used to being the boss, you know.
hmm.
Because he tried to work at when he was under medication, he was able to he was able to function pretty well, pretty normal, you know, as long as he took his medication.
Hmm.
Of course, I think that kind of kept his libido and everything down. Those drugs are, yeah, better you don't have to take them.
Mhm.
But he wasn't able to follow the his workers' rules. He was perfection bound. And when he pressed a suit of clothes, perfect. Well, this one guy he worked for insisted that he put out more stuff. He's never mind those fine stuff. They don't see it anyway. Push it through. I want more. Of course, that made some trouble there, and he left that place.
Mhm.
He had a hard time keeping a job.
Do you have if you could give like one piece of advice to like me, because starting, I'm not married, I'm not really going to be married anytime soon, like what would you give me? What would you tell me?
Well, I tell you to go slow. See, we were engaged for 3 years before we took the step. And we thought right from the start, that's it.
Mhm.
We could have gotten married then. But both he and I thought, well, get to know one another first.
Mhm.
Find out what their thoughts are on religion, meet their family, see what they like, what they don't like.
Mhm. And advice about life in general, not just relationships and marriage.
Life in general. Like what?
Well, like career wise, or just about living.
Well, get as much education as you can. That's my motto. That's why I kept the kids in school, and that's one of the reasons I went to work too, so that I could help them get through school. When they tried to quit or try to get side jobs, school first. Get your schooling in,
Mhm.
and they did it, and they all graduated from college, you know,
Mhm.
which is great. I'm proud of them.
Mhm. So.
And higher. Kathy went higher than college.
Don did too.
And Don did too, yeah.
Mhm. So, great. Well, thank you.
And David did too. He's a
I
lawyer.
think so. Yeah, yeah, he did. So. Mhm.
And even Ricky. Ricky's kind of an entrepreneur.
Mhm.
And so is Danny,
Mhm.
your dad. Yeah. They all turned out pretty good, didn't they?
Mhm. They did.
Yeah.
So. They did. Great. Thank you very much, Grandma.
You're welcome.
So, talking to me.